Martin Luther King said, "Sola Scriptura." What does that mean? It means that Christian faith should be based on the scripture alone, not on the various traditions and cultures. But here's the interesting part. Thomas Aquinas, he made a similar statement around 300 years ago. He said that sola canonica scriptura est regula fide. What does that mean? It means that the Christian faith should be led only by the scripture and not by any other thing. So, Crash Course took up these arguments from the what the philosopher Thomas Aquinas said, and they have put it in a different way. So, I have my co-host Jacob with me, who will be taking us in this journey and helping us to know more about the reality. So, hey Jacob.
Hey man, yes. I think that's an interesting point for most of the viewers. Many times we think that Protestant Reformation movement that brought the idea that scripture alone is the rule of faith.
Yeah.
But the great philosopher and thinker Thomas Aquinas said it. And today in this podcast, we are addressing Crash Course accusations and their attempt to debunk Thomas Aquinas and his arguments for God. Like as always, we would highly recommend that you watch the video. The link is in the description and it is popping up right now. So in this video, what they do is they present what is Thomas Aquinas' 5 arguments for God, and they address the first 4 arguments, which is commonly known as the cosmological argument, and the last one is the teleological argument, or the argument from design, as we call it now. We'll also be addressing the first 4 cosmological arguments in this episode, and in the upcoming episode we'll be discussing more about the teleological argument, not just basing it upon just what Thomas Aquinas said, how that argument has evolved and has come to shape as more and more scientific discoveries base it fundamentally that there has to be intelligence behind the beginning of the universe.
Okay.
Now, right before this episode by Crash Course, they did an episode in which they began addressing the topic of philosophy of religion. So they talk about Anselm of Canterbury's ontological argument. But I don't feel that it's just that I don't feel that the ontological argument by Anselm is that good compared to other arguments like the cosmological argument, the axiological argument, the teleological argument, and many such. It's just that, just like Immanuel Kant, the philosopher, I accept the conclusion, but I don't hold to that argument. It's just that. And I think that there are other stronger arguments. So, what Aquinas also felt is that, as it said in the video, Aquinas also wanted to present stronger arguments than what Anselm had already said. So, he comes along with these 5 arguments. And the first 4 are categorized as cosmological arguments, because these arguments are presented by observing what happens in the nature around us and deriving explanations from nature. And the last one is the teleological argument, or argument from design. Now we'll be addressing the last argument in the next podcast. As in this podcast and as per the episode of Crash Course, they are addressing only the first 4 arguments, or the cosmological argument. So first step, argument from motion. What Aquinas said is that everything in the universe is in motion. So this motion was brought into place by something else. And eventually when you retrace it back, there must be some static entity that brought the first motion into place. And because of infinite regress not possible, that entity should not be something that is subject to motion, or something that was brought into motion. The same thing follows for causation, that causes bring effects into reality. So everything that we find in the universe can be traced back as a result of cause and effect. So the first effect must be brought into effect by the first cause. And because we cannot allow infinite regress, and I will be addressing infinite regress later on, and because we cannot allow infinite regress, that cause itself must be first cause and uncaused. So next up is argument from contingency. Another philosopher, Leibniz, presented the argument from contingency, and he said this: you can designate everything that exists into 2 ways. Either they are contingent materials or entities, or they are necessary entities. Contingent in the sense that they owe their explanation or existence to something else. So they could have easily not existed. If they had not existed, nothing would change in the universe. So in the same way, I could have not existed and the life would go on. Piyush would have not existed, this podcast would not have existed, YouTube and the creators would not have existed, but life would go on. Nothing would change drastically, because we are contingent, we just depend on other things. But he said that once you trace the contingency, you will come with a being that has to be a necessary being, that does not owe its explanation to anything else. Now maybe I can explain that that being is a necessary being, but there my explanation will stop. I cannot trace its explanation of existence to something else. I cannot owe, or that being or entity cannot owe its explanation to something else. So Aquinas also argued that when you retrace the steps of contingency, you will find out with the being that is a necessary being that does not always existence to anything else. So it's also the same part. And the next one is that argument from degrees. Now this is very similar to the objective morality argument for God, the axiological argument. Okay. There has to be a standard of objective morality against which we compare good and right actions, wrong actions, and we understand whether it's which part of the scale it comes up. So if there has to be a standard of perfection, there has to be a standard of absoluteness against which we compare anything in our life. Even Crash Course puts the example of comparing size as example that there has to be a standard of perfection against which we can compare perfectness and imperfectness, standard of goodness against which we can compare good acts and evil acts. So he said that standard has to be beyond humans, and that standard has to be God. So these are the first four arguments that Aquinas put forward. Now soon after explaining these arguments, Crash Course goes on and they make these certain what they seem as defects of Aquinas' argument. First they say that these arguments do not particularly point towards a God, nor the God of the Bible. And I grant it, exactly. These arguments don't point towards the God of the Bible. It could be any God. You can even at the moment allow the possibility of polytheism as well.
Yes.
So it can be that something exists beyond the universe, something exists out there, to which everything can be owed. They also say that Aquinas does not make the case for a sentient God. Now, sentient means any being that can feel emotions, that can think, that has a willpower, that has a mind. So they say, like they use example, like it could be a rock, it could be an egg. So it can be anything that does not have any mind, or it's not, or it could be something that is impersonal. Like the view of deism says that which created the universe is an impersonal force. It does not mind what happens in the universe. Is that the case? Well, we'll see. We'll see if the cause of the universe is impersonal.
Okay.
They go on to say that Aquinas was wrong to disown infinite regress. But here's the thing: Crash Course does not address the point of infinite regress, because that is a very key point in Thomas Aquinas' arguments and also in the further fine-tuned cosmological arguments. They don't address as to why they think infinite regress is possible. All that the narrator is saying is that if infinite regress is possible, if that is the case, then Aquinas' arguments are disproved.
Yeah.
I can also come along and say, for example, some person is brought before the court as a culprit, and the prosecution says, we have the evidence, so and so, and these point towards it. Now, as the defendant, maybe I can stand up and say, if these are not strong evidence, or if these objects of crime, if these items do not belong to him, then he might be declared innocent. I can say if, but that is not evidence towards it.
Yeah.
So all the Crash Course does is that they say that if infinite regress is not true, then Aquinas will fail. And eventually they say that the arguments of Aquinas are self-defeating, because why is God exempt from this rule? Basically, why is God exempt from causation? Why can't he be caused? Why can't he be the result of some other motion? So this is also intrinsically connected with the infinite regress issue, because the infinite regress addresses why God should be exempt from this. And this do not place the final nail in the coffin of Aquinas' arguments. Aquinas presents some raw, I will admit, raw initial arguments, but they have been fine-tuned over the course of time.
Yes.
And we believe that the more refined cosmological argument of our current era is able to present and defend Aquinas' arguments and present a stronger case for theism. So I believe most of our audience might be familiar with what is known as the Kalam cosmological argument. So the Kalam cosmological argument is very simple. It has two premises and one conclusion. Premise 1 says, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise 2 says, the universe began to exist. And the conclusion that follows is, the universe has a cause. So this is a very airtight presentation, because if the premise 1 and the premise 2 are accurate, then the conclusion is inescapable. So now let's see if these two premises have any logic in it, or if it is rational. Now the first premise is understandable from observational science, that everything that begins to exist has a cause.
Yeah.
Now it can be retraced into any form of cause, be it efficient cause or material cause. So I don't think that even atheists themselves who object to the cosmological argument have any sort of difference there, because they also hold on to observational science and making conclusions from what we observe. So the first premise we can say is grounded in self. The things that come into existence either have a material cause or a formal cause, final cause, or an efficient cause. Some have all of this. Anyway, it will have one cause or the other. The second one, the universe began to exist. And for quite some time, atheists used to hold the position that the universe was infinitely old, that the universe never began to exist, that it was always here. And people like Sir Fred Hoyle and David Hume, this ancient philosopher, all of these and many more held the position that the universe has been like this forever. So they came up with different theories as science progressed that to avoid the expansion of the universe. For example, the Bible says that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The universe began in time before. So what they had to do, all they had to show was that the universe never began, that it had been here all the while.
Yeah.
So if they're able to show that, then they have disproved Bible from the very beginning itself. So that's a major blow to the Bible. But here's the interesting part. Albert Einstein himself gave in to this temptation that he had to take the side of the non-theist. So what happened was, when he discovered, if I'm right, it is in 1905 or 1907, when he discovered the cosmological constant, what is known as dark energy. He modified the value of the cosmological constant so as to present the universe in a steady state. So the universe is not expanding nor is it contracting. It's in that steady state. So in that case, they can say that the universe has been in this case for eternity, and it never began. It has been in this way. But in 1920, when Edwin Hubble, through his Hubble telescope, saw through the redshift velocity of the galaxies afar, how light travels, he saw that the galaxies are moving apart. So then he understood that if the galaxies are moving apart, so that means
the universe is expanding.
It's expanding. So he started to retrace it back in time. So if the universe is expanding at 100 meters a day, and if the size of the universe is 1 kilometer in diameter, then yesterday the universe size should have been 900 meters. So he thought then it would be day before yesterday, should be 800 meters. So eventually what he was pointing towards is the universe began from an infinitely small size and then expanded from there, because that's how expansions work, like a grenade explosion. So this showed that the universe had a beginning of sorts. The universe is expanding. So many theories came up and said that the universe is in a steady state hypothesis. Sir Fred Hoyle, the British astronomer, was at the pioneer of this. That the universe is in the steady state, there's nothing happening. And that failed, and they came up with oscillating hypothesis, where they said that the universe is expanding now, and eventually it will contract, and then the universe would expand again, and then it would contract. So they said that this expansion and contraction has been going on for eternity. So what they're doing is, as science disproves the atheist argument that the universe did not have a beginning, and show that the universe had a beginning in the past, in history, they came up with arguments to show that the universe did not begin, because then it shows that the atheists have been wrong for thousands of years, and the Bible had correct from the moment it was written. And one example that I would like to use is, and this is useful when we are speaking about infinite regress, is that the philosophical argument is this, that the universe cannot be infinitely old, or time cannot be infinitely old, that time had to begin. Here's the thing. If the universe had been infinitely old, we would never reach today. Okay, now this might be a bit hard to take in, because you might be listening in to the podcast while you're at work or the gym. So let me put it this way. If the universe began 1 million years ago, then it would take 1 million years from that starting point to reach today. But the universe is infinitely old, right? That's what atheists say. So then in that case, the universe should begin maybe 100 billion years ago. So it would take 100 billion years to start from that point and to reach today. But it's not 100 billion years ago. And we keep on going and going and going, and we look into trillions and trillions, trillions to the power trillions. We can keep on going with the numbers.
It's infinite.
Infinite. So what you're looking is that you need to cover infinity from that part to reach today. But how can you cover infinity? So what should, if the universe had been here for eternity, if time has been here for eternity without a beginning, then we would never reach today. Because you can say that, well, the universe began a zillion years ago. And then I would say, well, I have to cover a zillion years in time for present day to arrive. But it's not a zillion years, right? So it keeps on going and going backwards, that we will never reach today. So this was a philosophical argument that time had to begin, that the universe had to begin, that it could not be eternal. And then as Stephen Hawking came forward, and the general theory of relativity and the space-time theory of general relativity, as all these came forward, and Stephen Hawking and Roger Penrose and George Ellis, they put forward their models. The Big Bang model came into existence, and came to know that the universe had a beginning. Not only that, space and matter and time itself had a beginning with the Big Bang. So the conclusion that the universe came into existence with space and time is inescapable. Dr. Hugh Ross of Reasons to Believe notes that the space-time theorem guarantees a past singular boundary for the universe. This singular boundary means that not only are matter and energy traceable back to a beginning, but space and time as well. Even Hawking himself said time itself must have a beginning, as he was quoted by John Boslow in Inside the Mind of a Genius.
Yes.
So, to prove that time itself had a beginning obviously was a challenge. But since that is proved, we can know that, as well with current scientific dating, that the age of the universe traces back to around 13.5, 14 billion years ago. So now we have seen that the universe began to exist. So the conclusion, like I said, is it's an airtight presentation, and it's inescapable. The universe had a cause. So sometimes atheists come along and they say, well, things within the universe have come into existence with a cause, but it doesn't mean that the universe must have a cause. So it's like, so one example that they say is, just because the sheep has a mother does not mean that the herd has a mother. But this is just mere word play. I can come along and I can say, just as the sheep needs food, so does the herd also need food. So like I said, this is mere word play. And atheists who do not want to accept that the universe had a cause, and predominantly these atheists do not also hold on to creation ex nihilo. Creation ex nihilo means that creation out of nothing. So this is based from the biblical standpoint that God brought the universe and everything into existence out of nothing. But atheists say, well, that is not possible. The universe must have come into existence from something else. So they say it's creation ex materia. Even if that is the case, we are looking at a form of cause, which is known as material cause. So as the table, the final product is the table. As the table has an efficient cause, the carpenter, it also has a material cause, that is wood. So in the same case, the universe also then has a material cause, that is the creation ex materia. The universe began from existing material. Even Paul Davies, Arizona State University professor, he came across with suggestion of quantum tunneling and fluctuations in the quantum vacuum to present that the universe would have popped into existence because of the fluctuations in the quantum mechanics era. But then again, it's also pointing to something causing the universe to come into existence. So either you believe in a being that brings the universe to existence, or whether you believe that the universe came to existence on its own from other material. Either way, you're saying that there is a cause of a sort. Okay, now let's see what can bring the universe into existence. It's easily deductible that whatever brought the universe into existence has to be beyond space, time and matter.
Yeah.
Because space, time and matter cannot bring space, time and matter into existence.
True.
So the cause of the universe, I'm not saying it's God. I'm not saying it's the God of the Bible. I'm saying the cause of the universe.
But then it's something supernatural, right?
It's beyond the material world. So it
is supernatural.
It should be. Okay? But let's not jump to conclusion. Let's follow the steps. Okay, and let's see where we end up.
Cool.
So the cause of the universe then must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Well, if the cause of the universe is immaterial and spaceless, well, that the cause of the universe can be present anywhere, because there is nothing that prevents that cause from reaching any point, or there is nothing that limits that cause to a particular physical space. It's spaceless and immaterial, and the cause should be timeless as well. Atheists come along and say, and I think if I'm right, I don't recall the name, maybe if I recall I'll put it in the description, but Rationality Rules YouTube channel, in that Stephen presents one cosmologist's name, and he says that person came along and he said that maybe time in itself did not come into existence, but our understanding of the universe broke down at that particular point of time. So what he was ascribing to was that there might be a different form of imaginary time that could have existed before the universe. Now, either way, even if that is the case, the cause of the universe is timeless, at least in perspective to our time dimension. That is inescapable conclusion.
Yeah.
Okay, now to ascribe to imaginary time there is no grounding for that. They think that there is a possibility that could be the case, but there is no strong evidence to make that the case. So even if that is the case, the cause of the universe will be timeless. So if the cause of the universe is timeless, then the cause of the universe cannot have a beginning in that sense. Because if that is the case, then you can say before the cause came into essence, and before the cause came in, and after the cause came into effect. So the cause of the universe has to be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Now philosophers have figured out that there are only two entities or two structures that can satisfy this condition. One is abstract numbers. Like you mentioned, these are like necessary entities, that they exist on their own, abstract numbers. The other thing is what philosophers understand to be God. But why can't abstract entities come to existence? Why should the cause be personal if it has to be God? Why can't it be a non-personal, non-sentient being? Even in the video itself, the narrator said, well, why can't it be a rock or an egg? Why does it have to be a sentient being? Is the example. Let's take into cause and effect the understanding into principle. In a room, there is an AC, okay? And the AC brings the temperature down, and there is a big pool of water, and if the temperature drops below 0 degrees Celsius, then the water will become ice. Okay? So the cause would be the temperature drop, and the cause of that would be the AC. So the AC is the foremost cause. It brings temperature to below 0 degrees, and that in turn leads up to the final effect, that is the water becoming ice. Now if that water had been ice in that room forever, okay, eternally, then that would mean that the temperature in that room had been eternally
below 0 degrees.
So then that means that the AC, okay, has been in that state, maintaining the temperature below 0 forever. Okay. Now since we're looking at the change, let's make simplify it. Let's take just the temperature and the ice. Okay. If the water had been ice forever, then that means the temperature in that room had been below 0 degrees Celsius forever. So that's the cause and that's the effect. But what if I tell you that the water became ice 10 minutes ago? So then that would mean that the temperature
fell below 0 degrees 10 minutes ago.
So what made that temperature fall below 0 degrees Celsius 10 minutes prior? So if the temperature, okay, the cause had been non-sentient, without a mind or anything, then it should have been 0 degrees Celsius forever. What we see with this change is that something made the temperature to change it to 0 degrees Celsius and set the water into coldness. So the cause took a decision at that point, and it became 0 degrees Celsius at that point. So what it shows is that the universe came into existence not infinitely old, but the universe came into existence 14 billion years or 13.5 billion years ago. So the cause of the universe, which is timeless, did not create the universe up until 14 billion years ago. So the cause, which has been existing eternally, took a decision, as it seems.
So it was a voluntary.
It was a voluntary action. So that means the cause of the universe cannot be a non-sentient entity. It has to be something that is personal with a mind. So now we have seen two arguments as to why the cause, which is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, has to be a personal mind. So now, as you see, we are moving further and further towards theism. We are very much away from atheism. We are moving further and further from theism. Up until the three characteristics of the cause, we were in deism, which meant that the cause of the universe is impersonal. It just created the universe and went on its way. But with this example, we see that the cause of the universe is not just an impersonal force, but a personal force. And the universe has been highly fine-tuned for life to exist and for humans to exist. So the cause of the universe is concerned with human life, is concerned with life in this world, it's concerned with meaning and purpose in this world. So that shows that the cause of the universe is not just something that has a mind, but something that has concern in itself to what it is creating. So we are very much moving closer towards theism. And very far away from atheism. Also, this cause that brought the forces of nature into existence, the four forces: gravitational force, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, and electromagnetic force. The cause that brought these forces into existence had to be immensely powerful, and the cause that brought dark energy into existence has to be immensely powerful, because right after the Big Bang, an instance of asymmetry breaking, as it is titled, happened, where the one natural force broke into gravitational force and strong, weak electromagnetic nuclear force. And then it goes further and further, and finally we have the four natural forces governing the universe, and they are exquisitely fine-tuned in each and every aspect, in the form of creation of atoms, neutrons, electrons, protons, the expansion rate of dark energy. All of this are highly controlled to the extent that it means that the cause of the universe is way more powerful than all the natural forces combined. So I don't see why we can't say that the cause of the universe should be omnipotent, or why we can't say that the cause of the universe should be omnipresent, because it's spaceless and immaterial, and it can also enter into time because it is timeless. As well. So it should be omnitemporal as well. And we are moving closer to omnibenevolency, because we see this cause that is fine-tuned the universe that benefits human life. We'll be addressing that further in the teleological argument, and we are also addressing the objective in the upcoming podcast, and we have also addressed it in the objective morality argument, where that objective standard has to be the standard of perfection.
Yes.
So we are seeing evidence as we move forward further and further close to theism. Now the final point about infinite regression, as the narrator of Crash Course has said, the argument is self-defeating, because it says, why is there an exception for God? Why isn't God something that needs creation? Alright. So I think you guys might have recalled the philosophical explanation for the beginning of universe and time of infinite regress that we spoke about. Alright. The universe U comes into existence, and it is brought into existence by G. Okay, let's title it G. So we say that G is the first cause, the unmoved mover, as Aristotle called it, that uncaused cause. But atheists come along and say, well, why does the cause of the universe should be exempt? I mean, in that case, the cause of the universe should be caused. So you'd be like, okay, fine, let the cause of the universe be caused. Let H bring G into existence, and let G bring U, the universe, into existence. Well, why should we stop with H?
Yeah.
Something should bring H into existence. So I brought H into existence, H brought G into existence, and G brought the universe into existence. Why are we stopping with I? We could go with all the letters J, K, L, M, N, P, Q. Okay. So let's say we reach Z. Okay. So Z, Y, X. It has come through all the way H, G, and we reach the universe U, and we come into existence. But the issue is, why are we stopping with Z? Why can't the cause keep on going on and on and on and on? If that is the case, if all the causes of the universe and their succeeding causes have been brought in existence by preceding causes, then we are looking at infinite regression, which means that our universe will never exist, because Z has to come into existence first for Y to come into existence, and then the next one, and then the next one, for H to come into existence, for G to come into existence, and then for G to create the universe. But we are not stopping with Z. We're keeping on going on and on and on and on. So you don't even get to stop at a particular cause to say that that cause was the first cause, and that created this chain event. So now the issue for the atheist is, he has to either choose between where he wants to stop with, because he can't go on this infinite regression. And this is the key part as to why the argument is not self-defeating, why the cause of the universe must be uncaused. Because you cannot answer the problem of infinite regression in any other manner. Now the challenge before the atheist is, he has to debunk our presentation that the cause of the universe, that is spaceless, timeless and immaterial, is the uncaused cause. He has to say, no, that is not the case. There is something else that brought G into existence. If that is the case, then he has two options. Either he has to go through the infinite regression, keep on going back to infinity, and that will lead him nowhere. It's a dead end, because the universe won't come into existence. The second option is for him to stop somewhere along the line. Maybe he can go back 300 causes in the past, or 1 trillion causes. But the problem for the atheist is, why is he stopping at that point? Why is he stopping at the letter Z, the cause of the universe? Why can't he go to Z alpha and Z beta and Z gamma? Why is he stopping at that particular point? There is no reason for him to say, I believe that the 300th cause or the 5th cause of the first cause of the universe is the main and the uncaused cause. There is no explanation for him to say. So, but we say the cause of the universe, because it is beyond time and space and matter, has to be the first cause. Like I said, there is no reason to say that H is the first cause. What is the logic to say that G is not the first cause, but H is the first cause?
Exactly.
So this is why we say that the cosmological argument, the more refined, the present day argument, the cosmological argument is one of the best philosophical arguments for God. I would say it is the best philosophical argument for existence of God, and it brings into the aspect of science and reasoning, which presents an inescapable conclusion. So with this video, though Crash Course tried to take down Aquinas' argument, when we look at the final crafted cosmological argument, and when we see the issue of infinite regression, you cannot escape the conclusion. And when you couple it with Carroll's failure to address the issue of infinite regression, and all that they did say is that, well, if infinite regression is possible, then Aquinas' arguments fall. But like we said, there is no reason to think that the infinite regression argument is going to fail. There is no reason to think in that way. So you cannot escape from the argument presented by the cosmological argument. Even Rationality rules Stephen, when he said that the cosmological argument has been debunked in a video he presented 2 years ago, he restricted his arguments to merely the core syllogism, the Kalam cosmological argument. He spoke about the premise 1, premise 2 and the conclusion. He never went into the rest of it, because all that happens is a chain reaction of following what preceded. When you look at what happened and when you retrace the past, that is the essential and unavoidable conclusion.
Okay.
So Aquinas' cosmological arguments still stand. Granted, the initial ones were raw and they had required some fine tuning. But as the narrator himself says, when you see an argument, if you hold on to it, you go and refine it and make it more fine tuned. And that's what philosophers like Dr. William Lane Craig have done over the years. And they have fine tuned the cosmological argument to present one of the strongest scientific and philosophical arguments for the existence of the unmoved mover who is concerned with our life and who is concerned with the destiny of our life. A God who answers the questions of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny.
Wow. So it was nice talking with you, Jacob, and really want to thank you for, clearing out all our doubts. So yeah, and you guys, thank you for listening to us, and we'll be back with the next podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. Once again, I'll remind you that whatever links we have mentioned in this podcast, you'll find it in the description. So signing off for now. Take care.
I did all that I could to undo me, but you loved me enough to pursue me.